if you flip to Matthew chapter 5 and verse 14, this might sound familiar because this is exactly what he read this morning. And this is, my beginning text here this morning. If you were here Friday night, which Brian wasn't, you'd heard that and said, oh, isn't that funny that Brian's doing the same verse that Matt did? And like, no, it's not funny. It's probably the Holy Spirit, if I had to guess. Anyway, Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. So I want to talk about being an example. And it's not just teachers, although we have a decent amount of teachers, in our congregation and former teachers in our congregation who have played the role of being an example to students. But I want us to understand that all of us are examples, regardless of whether your job is a teacher or something like that. As a parent, of course, you know that you're an example to your children. But even if you have no children, and your children are adults and grown up and gone, and they don't even, call you anymore, Zaven. Just kidding. He'll never see it. Anyway, you're still an example to somebody. Like this church generation is an example to the next generation. Like every church, you're passing on like what is essential to the next generation. And none of us in the church or in the world can look back at the generation coming up. I mean, we can. We 100% do this. We look back at these youngsters and go, what's wrong with these kids? Why don't they get their act together? What's wrong with them? It's like, we raised them. It's not all on them. We raised them. And so we need to take it seriously. Whether it's, genetic or bloodline family, it doesn't matter. Like, we are raising the next generation. We are an example to them of what is important. And we need to live this deliberately. We need to take it more seriously now. I mean, the world is in a desperate way, and this is not a time for us to retreat from it. This is a time that the world needs our example more than ever. Hiding from the world does no one any favors. It certainly doesn't do the gospel any favors. We need to consider the fact that we are called to be examples. We are called to be the light of the world, the light on the city on a hill that cannot be hidden. You can't take a lamp and put it under a basket. I've gone through this before, obviously, because this is the Gospel of Matthew, and we spent 3.5 years in it. But if we're not talking about a light bulb, we're talking about an oil lamp. If you take a wicker basket and put it over top of an oil lamp, what do you think's going to happen? You're likely to burn your house down. You're going to set it on fire. You're not going to diminish the light because you can't hide this light. And us Christians, we can't think that we could hide this. God will find a way to burn that mess down, and he'll glorify himself in the process. We can't hide this. We need to be seen. If we're going to be an example, then first of all, we need to recognize that we need to be seen. We have to be light. We can't be hidden. We can't hide this. We can't retreat from the world. We're not called to be monks or hermits. We're called to be the light of the world. And so we need to engage. And you know, I'm not crossing lines into being unequally yoked with unbelievers. I'm talking about being in the world but not of the world. Like, it feels like we've taken the in the world but not of the world and reduced it to not in the world or of the world, and tried to find a million different ways to stay away from the world. But that's not our calling. Our calling is to engage the world, and we have to be seen. They have to see that you have peace when they're anxious, that you have strength when they have nothing left, that you have love when they're surrounded by hate. They have to see these things, and they won't see them if we don't engage. And so, again, it's not just teachers. God bless all the teachers. Seriously. I really, you know, you guys, you matter so much and so directly are playing this role. And those of you involved in public schools, God bless you and send you more. You need more help because those kids can't be left alone. They need Christian teachers. They need Christian fellow students. They're desperate. They need to see you. And so, like, but it's not just them, it's all of us. You have a job, you have a mission field. There it is. You don't need to be sent overseas. You already got a mission field. You got a hobby, well, then you've got a mission field. Just do it with other people. You know, be deliberate. I know that some of us are not inclined towards this, and I'm one of those people. So I have to be deliberate in making sure that I force myself to engage. So, you know, yes, I go to Planet Fitness. I could work out at home, but I'm deliberate in doing this. It only costs me $10 a month. No, I'm not trying to sell it, but you know, it's really not that bad. But I'm deliberate. Even then, like I'll put earbuds in and I really don't make eye contact with people because I'm not good at like talking to people and like, you know, encountering strangers. You know, you guys who are gifted at that, way to go. Like, but I'm deliberate in putting myself in the same place over and over again. And eventually somebody does go, hey, you know, and then there's a couple people at the gym that I know. Like when I come in and if I see them, I go, hey man, how you doing? And we talk and they say, oh, what's going on? You know? And that's only because I've been deliberate about it. It's not because I'm good at it. It's taken a long time to get there. You know, I'll eat at the same place every week on Friday. Every week I'll eat at the same restaurant. I could eat at home. It's cheaper. But besides, it kind of helps me to, you know, get out of my element and work on my sermon. It also gives me an opportunity to engage the same persons over and over again. And sure enough, given a week, sometimes it's not too long. Sometimes it's months though. And then somebody will come over and go, so what are you doing? And I'll say, I'm getting ready to preach. I go, oh, what's that about? Like, I do that deliberately because I'm not going to stop that guy on the sidewalk. I'm not going to engage that person somewhere else. There's no way I'm going to do that. But if I'm willing to be deliberate in engaging the world, even in that passive manner, the Lord will eventually like make the opportunity for there to be like interaction and conversation. And I'm saying that we need to be deliberate in choosing not to retreat from the world, but to engage the world. We need to. And I'm not saying that should be your life. I'm not saying every night of the week you're sitting around at some bar or restaurant waiting for someone to talk to you about Jesus. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that you, me, like God has a mission field for us. And it might be work, it might be your school, it might be your hobby. But somewhere, somehow, there's people for us to be engaging with. And even those of us who can't get out the door, engaging them in prayer. Like, we need to be deliberate about this. Anyway, the first part of being an example to the world, if we're going to be an example to the world of what it is to have faith, to have morals, to have peace, to have love, if we're going to be an example of those things in a world that doesn't have any of those things, then we have to be seen by the world. We have to be seen. We can't hide from them. We have to engage. And so, first of all, we have to be a light in the world. We have to be in the world. We have to be engaged. And so I'm encouraging us to look towards those places and ways that we can engage the world. Second of all, if we're going to be a decent example, I would suggest that they would see us, not just see us, but see us working on it. And I say this in contradiction to see us perfect. And I think that a lot of people think, either like just drop off, because I mean, you'd say like, well, I'd like to engage the world, but I'm not perfect. And then they're going to see that, and that's going to be a problem. Or we think that we're perfect and we go like, oh, I'm going to go show the world how to do things because I'm perfect. And that's not what we're shooting for. Truth is, perfect doesn't make a great example, because there's, I think, two really common ways that people go when they see the perfect person. When they see the perfect person, they either assume that you're just full of it. There's no way their life is that good. There's no way that they're that nice, or, all the time, really all the time. No, I don't believe it. There's some kind of secret thing going on. There's some kind of weirdo, pervert, shyster guy stealing all my stuff. That's something that's perfect doesn't exist. And we all know that. So why pretend to be perfect in front of people? Why even work on giving that impression? And the church has done a pretty bad job at, I think, if not encouraging that directly, like definitely by implication, we kind of give the impression that, we're supposed to be perfect. Christian leaders have done a terrible job at that. I think, Christian leaders have often, through the years, given off the, like, you can't show, any weakness. You can't, you can't struggle. You can't, question or doubt or this or that, and they have to give this, like, I've got it together all the time, every time. I always have the answer. And they give that impression to their people, which then the people think, well, that's the way I'm supposed to be too. But I tell you, the world looks at people like that and goes, I don't think so. I don't think so. Like, and even if, they don't immediately think that they're, actually some kind of deviant or something, hiding it in a closet. Even if they don't think that, if they actually think that we're some kind of exalted superhuman, well, then they go, I can't relate to that. And they can't connect. And all the stuff that you say about how they should be living their lives just goes, yeah, whatever. Yeah, if I was perfect like you, like they don't connect to that. And so the example is wasted because we're giving off the false impression that we're perfect. I'm suggesting that it's better for us to be seen as working on it. That's far more relatable. It's far closer to the truth because we are working on it. We're not perfect. And so as much as we want to be a good example, I think the best example is being transparent enough to say, sometimes, man, this thing at work really got me torqued, but I'm going to give it to the Lord. And then tomorrow morning, when you come in and you have peace and they're still torqued, I go, how'd you get over that? Well, like I said, I went home and prayed, and I'm going to be all right. Like, but they said there was a process. That, like, oh, really? So there's something people who are struggling can do to change things? Like, not just like perfect people just glide through this, but you struggle too, and yet God does stuff for you. Like that is something that people can connect to and maybe get on board with. Like, if you struggle with the same thing that I'm struggling with, and I'm getting nowhere here, and you've got an idea, like, tell me what you're doing. So, it's I think it's worthwhile for them to see an example of humility. There's times when it's right for us to say, I'm struggling. I'm not happy about this. I don't know where we're going to go. I don't know how this is going to work out. It's okay to say those things, and I think that they can relate to them. And of course, it's necessary for us to follow it with, but I'm going to trust the Lord. And then they can track that, and they can follow you and watch and see. Does the Lord do something? So I think that's important. I think I think it's really wonderful, even sometimes when we kind of mess up, struggle, even in front of the world, and then maybe come back the next day and say, hey, I'm sorry, I got weird yesterday. And for someone, like, the world has such barriers, self-esteem issues and things like that. Like, to apologize to somebody at work, it's like, ugh. It's degrading, and maybe they think of it as degrading and embarrassing or whatever. They see somebody that can say, that wasn't right of me, and I'm apologizing, and I'm sorry, and I don't want to treat you like that again. Like, if they could see somebody who has the strength, the security to be able to say something like that, that's an example of again, qualities that the world doesn't possess and desperately needs and often wants. I'm going to look in Titus for a moment, chapter 2. Titus in chapter 2. I'm going to pick up in verse 7 because that's right on point with what I was going to say. But I do have to say, I just want to comment right now on verse 6. Likewise, I urge young men to be sensible. That's really that's some insight right there. Teenagers, young men, have some sense about you. What are you doing? That's just funny. That's just like Paul talking to young men. Way to go. Be sensible. It feels like a dad. Hey, young guys, you have some sense. Anyway, that's a funny verse. All right, moving on to verse 7. In all things, show yourself to be an example of good deeds with purity and doctrine, dignified, sound in speech, which is beyond reproach, so that the opponent will be put to shame, having nothing bad to say about us. I want to talk about the fact that the things that we say, the sound in speech, is important. And I say this because definitely in the world and even inside the Christian community, there's a decent amount of people who say stuff like, you don't have to preach to everybody. Just live your life and they'll see it. Well, I wholeheartedly encourage us to live our lives with, integrity, godly character, and to do those things so that the world can see it. Let your light shine before men. I want to be clear that if you are not also testifying to the fact that it is Jesus, then it means nothing. Like, the world's not getting converted because you're a nice, good person. They need Jesus. And they need to know that you're a nice, good person because of Jesus. The testimony that you carry. Like, I wasn't like this before. Jesus saved me. Is essential. It's absolutely necessary. It is important for us to live a life that backs up the gospel. And it is important for us to not just go around preaching the gospel while simultaneously being hateful or lacking integrity in the workplace. Like that those things can undo themselves or undo each other, right? But I do not want us to think that, that our actions are enough for someone to get the revelation that Jesus died for our sins and that they need to give their lives to Jesus. That comes through the preaching of the gospel. Testify, share, pray in front of people, give God praise, be bold. You don't have to be rude to be bold. Be loving, kind, respectful, but be bold. The world needs to hear about Jesus and see you living a Jesus-filled life. It is not enough to be the most wonderful example of Christianity if the person doesn't hear the gospel. It doesn't help them. And so I want us to be sure to know that we have to find a way to say it. And you don't have to preach a message or a sermon. You could just, sometimes it's as simple as just sharing, and they say, hey man, you really took this, change at work, or you really took this, fallout at school, or you really took that well. And you could say, yeah, well, praise the Lord. I prayed about it and the Lord gave me some peace. Like, and then it'll go where it goes. They'll maybe ask you about it, or they'll go, you weirdo, and then walk away. But that'll be in their head the next time something comes up that you said it was Jesus. And that's a seed. That's all. You don't have to sit them down and give them a theological explanation of why you have peace. You can simply say, I was praying about it. And we were a couple guys out running yesterday morning, and Mario's me and him are talking, and he's just talking about, normal stuff, like he was talking to his neighbor, and his neighbor is going through some stuff and had some good news, and Mario could say, oh, that's awesome. I was praying for you. And it's like, yeah, you could just say that. It's okay to say that. I'm praying for you. And then when you have good news, yeah, it's awesome because I was praying for you. And, the implication is that's God, brother. I don't know what you think about God, but I'm saying I talk to God, and is it a coincidence? I don't know. But they seem to happen a lot when I'm praying. So, but sometimes it's just that simple. But being willing to be bold enough to say when, someone says, at work or school or wherever, they say like, oh man, I'm going through this, going through this stuff. And you say, I'm going to pray for you. Like sometimes that's it. Just the simplest thing. I'm going to pray for you. And then maybe next week you see him again. You say, hey, how you doing? Anything changing? I've been praying for you. Like you could say that. And then, maybe they'll ask, because they often do. Yeah, because they want to know what kind of weirdo is praying for me. What do where do you go to? You go to church? What kind of church is it? Well, the crazy ones, cult church? Yeah. But they want to know. And then the conversation happens. And then you talk about Jesus. But sometimes it's that simple. And I'm saying that the world is in a bad place, and it's very possible that it'll get weirder and worse. And we are in a place where, kind of like Joseph in Egypt, like we have a God who knows everything, and he can supply us with everything that we need. I'm talking about peace, grace, security, love, strength. In a world that's full of anxiety, uncertainty, like who has no security, these things that we have are precious. And when the world gets desperate, like Joseph in Egypt, the church will be the only resource for those things. But they have to know it. We have to be an example. We have to be seen. We have to be transparent. We have to be bold enough to say it. It's because I trust in God that I have peace. It's because of Jesus that I know it'll be all right. We have to engage the world and we've all, I'd say most of us have seen this happen in our lives before. Like there's been people in our lives, that you worked with or went to school with, and they might have, made fun of you a certain amount of the time because you were the weirdo Christian. And then sometime later, they come to you and say, oh man, I'm really going through some things, and I was wondering if we could talk. They come to you because you were a visible example of someone who had faith and peace and love, and they don't know where else to find it. So I'm saying this could happen more and more in this world as the world gets more uncertain and more hateful. But we need to be living that out. We need to be deliberate. And so I'm encouraging us to make up our minds, even as some are heading back to school, be an example in school, invite kids to youth group Bible study and get them to church. Teachers, just shine Jesus and love those kids. Staff, good luck. Do all the grunt work. But the rest of us, we all have mission fields. Every one of us. And so let's be deliberate in engaging in this work.